Either its back turned to the sea, or its gaze directed to the coast, where lived the fishermen he served. He left Newfoundland in the early 1930s at the height of the Great Depression, and passed his later years in Jamaica, and then Boston, where he died in '38. So he built up this town first before he toddled off. The little town and very scenic views of Port Union.
There's no need to watch the bridges that are burning. Lay your head upon my pillow. Hold your warm and loving body close to mine.
Have a group picture. I think you'll enjoy it when you get back home. Let's try a group picture first, and then we'll go up to the lighthouse.
So everybody, if you're happy, we've got 50 minutes, 5-0.
50 minutes here.
Watch the lighthouse. It's long.
Cold. So then
Old lighthouse. As I say, it's just $3 each. Over 100 years old. The Newfoundland flag's having a job. Oh yeah. Newfoundland flag. Some of the passengers are doing the walk up. They've already bought hats. What fun. You'll see the toilet. And I believe somebody in the lighthouse was Scottish. That's what I was told. We're heading down the road back into Bonavista for a spot of lunch at the P&K. Now you can ask those people, what does P&K stand for? See if you get an answer. So time for lunch, and then we're going to the Ryan premises to learn all about the maritime fishing industry after lunch, and I know a lot of you will really enjoy that. And we'll be going past the ship called the Matthew. So Molly was saying it's warmer here because of the hurricanes. It's blowing the warmer air up here. So it's usually a lot crisper. I know it's usually very cold out here, but today we were lucky. I think we've been lucky in a lot of places. She was saying the puffins were here last month. And the fall colours will be here next month. But if you came right now, this is a perfect time for weather, you know, not too hot, not too cold. So it's what we've got. We might see some puffins as we head in towards St. John, but I know they've moved on from here last month. The Ryan premises.
Skippers. Another meal? Look at that, huge.
It's going to be the driver's side off. I'm just going to...
stairs.
dominant, the most prevalent, chief source of protein, fed to masses for centuries, of course. It was there on the Grand Banks, the Labrador Sea, migratory stocks. Have you heard of the Capeman, ladies and gentlemen? Tiny pelagic fish, as they did for millennia, would come to spawn on the beaches, so then would come the cod. You can, if you like, that's whales, gulls, puffins, of course, and so on. Very little important little fish in the overall scheme of things. So the fishing families, they went out fishing in the early morning from their fishing room, meaning the place of the fisher persons. Extended families, you had your own root crops and so on, but right down by the seashore, all along the coast, a dock called a stage head. The stage was just a hut where they would go about the business of cleaning the fish, and I'll refer to it shortly. So they went out in June in the early morning, fathers, sons, and what have you, caught the fish, came back, and tie up to the stage head, pew, wooden handle. There's like a steel piece here, but very sharp at the tip. And you try to pew them through the head, thousands of pounds, of course, up onto the stage head, because if you went through the stomach, well, right away. Later, when it's salt dried and taped to the merchant, that's going to degrade your quality if there's bruising there, and so on. Here's true. See? Up it comes. Women, children, 5 or 6 year old kids is definitely family in this kind of fishery. Put the fish up. Cutthroat. Cutthroat knife, aptly named because you cut the throat and cut the abdomen down to the vent. Now, even here, don't go too deep. Gallbladder, whatever have you inside there, the liver, if you rub that, you could get that into the meaty part, the fleshy part, of course, and that could lead to rancidity if not thoroughly clean. Because rancidity would be like yellowish brown blotches. So then, cut throat, stomach, next person, gutting, moving the entrails, pick the livers. So with that person gutting, you see everyone, it's like this. All that meant was use your hand, separate it from the guts, and let it go down into a barrel. Because you accumulate this over the summer, and at the end of the summer it's going to render down and then go to the oil, from the matter to the oil, and the merchant collected it. Like 1929, for example, 10 cents for a gallon of cod liver oil. Doesn't sound like much, but as you, from your orientation earlier, I mentioned this was credit or barter. Going to bring that salt fish back to pay down their debt. Edding, the header, this will be tapered here, kind of wedge-like sharp. Fish comes over, so the person heading would like this. Puts thumb, middle finger here, but it's like, okay, you're going to push, like it's like pushing the fish away from the person and then snapping, like this. Okay, like pressure away, but snap. The head itself, but you had to get this stuff out of the heat into salt, so not much time to waste, but sometimes probably, if they like, cut it open, and you got this, cod cheeks, or cod cheeks. Wash them, and you cook them right away. Or, like, salt them, and after a few days, wash them and dry them, and of course, again, you have it as a food source. But there was no market for this. This was their own personal consumption if they wish. Splitting. Now, it goes from the header, splitting, over here against block, splitting knife. In my right hand, cutthroat in my left. So you can see they're different. You had to keep them sharp. Mostly the men did splitting, but there were some pretty good women those splitting as well, women in historically. Now that's the sounder backbone here that has to be removed. So, I'll move it out, everyone. So it's like this, but it's down over here like this. Cut down. Then, wiggle the knife in here. Now, cut and pull. And you have to be efficient. Don't cut too deep, because that's it. If it goes through, there's quality affected there. So not everybody could do it, and it took a lot of practice, but there were some pretty good, as I said, splitters. And I guess again, it's almost like that had to be kept sharp whenever possible. He said, down, in, wiggle, hold, and remember now, more fish come, more fish come, more fish come. Splitting fish. You're now looking at the face This is now what he refers to as the face and the back. Cod's not scaly like a salmon or herring, nor is it bony like a salmon or herring, for example, but there's some vertebrate there. Now, washing necks, you could have some particles of entrails there and so on. You wanna, so there's a big wooden tub of salt water, and it's like this. So whenever the splitters, they're doing this. Splash, splash, splash. Somebody now, right away, in the tub of salt water, brush or cloth, clean them. Now that they're clean, place them in, well, when they're clean, they need to be removed. Now remember, this was down here at the stage head where they landed them. Once now they're washed, they're to be salted. But the structure they salted them in was called the salt stage. That's all, just a shed. When I say stage, shed. It had to be back above the high water mark, because if storms came, it's too close, trash, fish gone. The stage head, that's all. Let it go, expendable. You go in the back country and cut wood and put it back. But protect, so it could be 90 feet in some cases, around this coast especially, depending on the location, from down there up to the salt stage. Now, how to move them? Could be a problem. Horse-drawn cart? No, not really if it was narrow. Rocky outcroppings, pathways, can't do it. Too steep probably for wheelbarrows, awkward? Nope. One last remedy, lug them by hand. Lug, carry. Put the fish now in the barrels with the handles, person on front, the back is like a stretcher cart. Thousands of pounds of fish in this way go up in the salt stage. The size of such a structure, depending on the scale of operations, I'll just use a random dimension, say it's 20 feet long, 10 feet wide, sod roof, cool inside, reserves of sulfur inside, in the barrel called hogshead. Hogshead barrels contain approximately 50 imperial gallons of salt. Women's roll now, say it's the first fish in June season, scoop it out in gallon buckets, go right over in the corner and lay down about 1/4 of an inch of salt all the way along. Take the fish, so salt's down, like this. Face up, head and tail, all the way, salt, fish, then salt, fish, and so on.
I missed you saying what season.
Started in June, when the
Okay, so-
Caitlin came in.
So, level bugs,
Bugs not a problem, flies could be, ma'am, in calm weather out on the flight later. Maggots. Bugs, not salt, see, because, no, salt, repel it. So, fish salt, not too much because you could burn it up, and too little. You would know later, when it dried, red on the face, that means red shank. So it's not good. In any case, quality is down. Fish salt, as one lady asked earlier, how high? 3 to 5 feet for first layer, or for all layers, like this, okay? Now you could have 3 or 4 more feet to the ceiling, no. 3, maximum 5 feet wide, too much downward pressure on the fish below. Okay, then start again. Salt fish, salt fish, salt fish. This one will represent another tier, and so on. Salting the kench was the word, K-E-N-C-H. That's just basically the containment area, fishery. This had the effect, you see the salt bringing out the moisture, and eventually, over the time, drip, 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 makes its way down and out to the floor of the stage. Dry fisheries are referred to. Now, you wouldn't really want to put that out in July, with July coming, because it could be hot. And a lot of times, dead heat, because you could burn it up. Wait until later in August to take it out to wash and dry it in kind of cooler days. However, pickled fish could be done. This was Spanish fish for that market. All depended on market and what the merchant was looking for from them. Now, what was Spanish fish, it had to be done in barrels. And that was done in the barrel called the puncheon. P-U-N-C-H-E-O-N, 100 imperial gallons in a puncheon. So, you get water, salt, making pickle. and the fish are going in. So the fish are sort of floating in a pickle. But with pickled fish, every 3 to 5 days it had to be taken out to wash and dry. No other way. That meant you would have to do it in the heat of July? Yes, indeed. But pickled fish could withstand the heat. You could dry it in July. See? So, moving on, everybody. So, whether it was the kench stuff later or pickled when it came to washing, women doing this, the men would assist if the weather was not good in their small boats, they would be ashore, they certainly would help. If not, women, grandparents, children, so taking it out of kench, like bulk salted or pickled, wash them in a large tub called a puncheon tub. That was a puncheon barrel, sawed off 3/4. You get 45, 50 gallons of water, salt water. So now then on the day of washing loads. Wash and stack. First fish, this is still at the salt stage. First fish face up, all of the fish going back up like this. Washing loads. It was said, on a good day, 3 or 4 women in a shore crew could wash upwards of 2,800 pounds of fish. Now that's in mounds, you see, like that. There was a word for this, leave it 3 to 4 days to press the water out before drying it on the flake. And apparently someone, so long ago, fish on top like this back up, maybe the dorsal fin, and that curvature, of course, of the way the mounds were laid out, said, resembles the back of a horse, of all things, and they used the term, putting them in water horse, for 3 or 4 days to press out the water. Now, with water horse fish, there were a couple of problems. One, flies. Flies. The nape, as in neck, air, is a meaty area, you want to call it fleshy area, and the flies want to cluster in there, and they would be, as they said, spit, meaning lay eggs, maggots. You could ward flies off with salt, chin in. Fine, good. One thing you couldn't control was weather, as in rain. Let's say it's day 1 and it goes in water horse. It's okay. Day 2, it rains. Oops. Day 3, that's when they probably want to get it out. Nope, still raining or damp, fog. 4th day, they had seriously consider taking the fish and salting it in again. It can't stay there. Fine line, certainly not beyond 5 days. Slime, fungal, bacterial agents are going to break down. Even by salting it in and later washing it out, quality's going down. However, on the 3rd day, wind, good weather. Now, remember those and barrels from earlier? Now they're going to use them now again. Now, take the fish. Now you're leaving the salt stage. Again, walk, go up the ramp on the nearby flakes, broad flakes. Longitudinal poles were called lungers. They would lay down dried boughs of spruce trees on there to cushion them off the lungers, long posts like this. So the fish are going down now on the flakes like this, in the tail. Face up. This is where you could have the problem then with flies. First, they talk of the children in early times with the boughs of trees to try to keep the flies at bay. When it dries after a few days, not a problem. They won't bother. It's just that, wet time. It's okay. Couple of days, face up, back up. At night, they bring them in these piles like this to try to get sweat out, more moisture. Of course, spread them out in the day. Probably be going in with good weather into a 2nd week, round piles. Like this. In other words, first fish, circular, face up, all other fish, back up. Now, if I had enough and enough space, circular, about 3-4 feet in diameter, up, 1 or 2 feet, and then later more probably. Now then, for a number of days or so, they cover them with birch bark or the bark from fir trees. They had cut rinds, as it was called earlier, and get the sods from the ground and place on there, of course, right, you see, to press. Make them flat. Working them or sweating out the moisture. Problem is there, they look like stacks of hay on the flakes in times past. If you ran into a lot of rain over a week or so, you could be ending up in a problem like this. On the face, you could get dark or white blotches, and that was mold. It was said, fish are going done. So you could combat that with salt water solution, but quality was going down. However, again, good weather. After that week or so, senior woman in the shore crew, now she's got, from her experience, she checks. Remember the kench? Light but bulk solid, everyone? That's going to be hard, dry. It's going to have a golden hammer you on the face, but it's thin. Okay? Now, rub the fingers along, and you've got a floury residue. That's salt that didn't come out. Good, good. And none of these negatives, like dun, like mold was present, everything, all the negatives that I've talked about are, looks good. Pickled fish, there's the characteristics of a pickled fish. It's thick versus this thin. Yes, it has smooth on the face, golden amber hue, floury residue, salt that didn't come out. Here's a difference too. Doughy feel, 7/8 dry. It's not hard dry. Of course, thick, that's the difference. Okay, doughy feel. Okay, these are your two subclasses. Okay. Then they give it a couple of days. Head to tail, like this. Face up, back up. Probably before shipping, they put them in larger piles then before shipping, and that was called faggots of fish. It's like faggots of wood and so on. It's an old term. That's what before shipping. Before shipping them to the merchant, give them a day or so, just color them up.
What type of brine did they use for pickling?
It's just a salt, man. Yeah. Now, this stuff, everyone, so if I add the dried fish like this, more yaffle, Y-A-F-F-L-E, a yaffle armful of fish. And yaffling is moving from A to B and so on. The cod itself, different sources give different information on the weight, for example, 11 to 26 pounds on average. Out of, given weight for a codfish, 40% loss from gutting and splitting, and a further 50% loss from salt drying. So you know this stuff is light. Now that's a dry fishery. It was in summer, near shore. Men at sea on ships, on the Grand Banks, or off the Labrador for a summer voyage. Now on the ships was all men. They weren't getting ashore like the small boat families. Okay? So same thing when it came on the deck, because I talked about there the dressing part, gutting and splitting. Where's it going when it's washed? Down in the hold. Bulk, in a bulk like the kench. But here's the difference. Where the women were, conservatively of course, right, putting the light amounts of salt on shore. Out there, stick the shovel into the reserve and just, it has longer period of time. You see heavily bulk salt. Caught wet or green fishery. The woodsman would say, for example, when the wood was first cut, we just cut it, that's green. Sap inside, you see? Well, tough. In the case of the fish, then broad short wash. Comments, questions, anyone?
They only have 5 minutes.
Well,
So you can go open it, but they gotta be at level.
I don't believe this city don't
I think there's more than one. So you got your key.
Bonavista, for the most part, 1975. Some of these buildings still stand underneath. Again, you see everyone is designed for yard work with the track plating and the commercial.
Trying to sneak past it.
churches.
So pretty.
I know it's a little bit off the main highway, but it's certainly worth coming down here, don't you agree?
Yeah.
It's the Parashol. It looks like there's another bus down there. So no more than half an hour, folks, otherwise we'll be late for our dinner. So we're gonna say, go and enjoy looking at the buildings, go and get an ice cream.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, that's too bad. He's not hurting anybody. Wow. He ever a big bugger.
Being a little poser earlier on when we stopped. Two reasons. One, for music, and two, the pop.
Here. Let's take a look at these lovely buildings as we're coming round the corner.
there is a church there.
So that big red one, I think it's the town hall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. She's a lovely tour guide.
Apple.
I
Apple photo.
I've run into her about 4 times so far. Yeah. She said, "Did you tell them about? Did you tell them about?" And I keep saying, "Yes, we've done that." She's a lady from St. John's. She's from Newfoundland, so she knows Newfoundland very, very well. I get that old house on the left, gosh. A blacksmith museum. The Living Forge. Yes. It's the Erickson premises. Lots of buildings you can go in and just explore.